Well, thank you for joining us. I'm Congresswoman Susie Lee from Nevada's 3rd Congressional District, and Boulder City is in the heart of my district, and it's an honor to join the mayor, our fire chief, and police chief here today, really to talk about what the American Rescue Plan means for the city of Boulder City. As we all know, this has been an incredibly long and tiring and stressful year for all of us. And I think first we need to take a moment and recognize the 550,000 Americans, including 5,200 Nevadans who have lost their life as a result of this pandemic. As we move forward, we have to continue to keep them in our hearts and minds, as well as their families, and really our entire community. So many of us have suffered as a result of the pandemic. But I'm happy to report there's light at the end of the tunnel, and basically we, especially with this American Rescue Plan, seeing investment into our communities. But the fact of the matter is Nevada still has an 8% unemployment rate, and we do understand that it is going to be a long road to recovery, and one that we're going to need to all continue to work together on. But we're doing everything we can to get the resources we need into our cities here in Nevada, and which is most importantly why we're here is the American Rescue Plan, which was just signed into law by President Biden. It basically is going to save lives and livelihoods by putting vaccines into people's arms, children back into school seats, money into people's pockets, but most importantly, getting people back to work. And what does that mean for Nevada? It's no secret that our state has been among the hardest hit of states around the country, but with our tourism, our hospitality, our entertainment industry, all at a standstill, our economy obviously suffered. But I'm happy to report that with the American Rescue Plan, it will bring $2.95 billion to our state government and $1.14 billion into local governments. And I think one thing that's really important to remember is back when we passed the CARES Act, a lot of funding came into the state government, but small municipalities like Boulder City basically were left out of the package. I mean, they received funding, but it came through the state. And this was a provision that I fought for to make sure that municipalities under 500,000 receive direct funding, because ultimately it is at the city level where we're providing the direct services. And so I'm pleased to report that of the $1.1 billion that will come into the state of Nevada, $14 million will come directly to Boulder City. This plan is also important. It's going to help get our kids back to school. I think we can all agree that our economy will get back on track when we get back to normal life, and the one indicator of getting back to normal is getting our kids back in school. And that includes, so this package includes $1.1 billion in relief for K-12 schools, also up to $1,400 for individuals in economic stimulus payments. Over 40,000 children will be lifted out of poverty as a result of the American Rescue Plan with the expanded child tax credits. It will also provide $3 billion for Economic Development Administration to aid communities that have been disproportionately impacted from a decline in travel and tourism. Restaurants, I'm about to go visit a restaurant here in Boulder City, will receive $28.6 billion in the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And so I'm gonna have a celebration with Vinny at his pizzeria, and he actually benefited from many provisions, the PPP program, the EIDL program, as well as the state-run PETS program. Shuttered venues, which has been, all of our live entertainment. I know our Playhouse here, the theater, will receive $15 billion in the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant Program. And that's going to launch in just a few days on April 8th. And last but certainly not least, something that I think we all need to be focused on, especially during a pandemic, is the plan to reduce healthcare costs. Under the American Rescue Plan, no American will have to pay more than 8.5% of their income for a good plan on the ACA marketplace. And if you're unemployed, you won't have to pay any premiums at all. And this is so important because access to quality, affordable health care could not be more important than a time like this. The American Rescue Plan is a fulfillment of our promise to the American people, because unprecedented times call for unprecedented solutions. So I'm happy to report that help is here. More help is on its way. And I'm really happy to introduce Mayor McManus so he can tell you exactly what this plan means for the city of Boulder City. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank Congresswoman Lee and her staff for coming to Boulder City to share the wonderful news in person with us. We know that Washington is so critical as we move forward to try and emerge from this pandemic a stronger and better community. I want to express our appreciation for your continuing interest in our community, Boulder City in particular. Boulder City businesses were impacted over the past 13 months with closures, limited occupancy, the cost of PPE. Stringent new guidelines put a burden on those businesses, their employees, to stay safe and keep their customers safe and healthy as well. The impact here on our senior community has been heart-wrenching. No visitors at many of the homes. And this building we're standing in, the Senior Center of Boulder City, is typically a hub for our older residents and was closed for months during the pandemic. Even while the staff here ramped up efforts to provide meals, supplies, and home visits to many of our senior residents. Families struggle with child care issues when the schools closed last March and are only now beginning to open back up again. And many families went weeks without a paycheck due to the massive demand on the unemployment system here in Nevada. And again, I think as Congresswoman Lee pointed out, there's extended help coming for those folks as well. Through it all, we persevered. Our emergency operations staff, led by our fire chief, Will Gray, met regularly to find ways to keep all of us safe and informed. Boulder City Police Chief Tim Shea rallied his officers and volunteers to check in on residents. They offered education for those businesses and individuals dealing with the new state and CDC guidelines. And acting city manager Michael Mays created a program using volunteers to call every household in Boulder City and ask if they needed assistance. Our utility division worked with those impacted financially, putting a halt on utility shutoffs and providing customers with other resources for assistance. Boulder City has been extremely fortunate to lower the positivity rate that many other communities have seen. We've been around 6%, very fortunately. I firmly believe that that's due to the efforts of our residents, our city staff, and school leaders. We could not have done what we've done without the incredible organizations here in Boulder City. Emergency Aid, Lend a Hand, Workforce Connections, the Boulder City Chamber of Commerce, just to name a few that have stepped up. Their support and commitment to Boulder City is invaluable and has been very important during these trying times. Congresswoman Lee, we're so appreciative to you and your staff. While the CARES Act funding helped our residents and businesses, the American Rescue Plan is a major boost to this community. Being able to spend the funds deliberately and effectively over a period of time that will last for well over a year, going into the 2 to 4 year range. I can see this plan aiding Boulder City in many ways, but not limited to the support for those nonprofits that have helped us so much during this pandemic. With rental assistance, utility assistance, child care, continuing support for our business community impacted by the pandemic, the retrofitting that needed to be done, the purchase of the PPE, keeping facilities at lower than normal occupancy has hit these businesses and employees hard. While the city provided grants to 34 of our businesses last year, we know there are still needs out there in our business community. The vaccination program, that will get us out of this pandemic. It continues at a good pace here in Boulder City. My compliments to Chief Gray for all the work that he's done on this. And we are now open to all adults in the community to be able to get the vaccine. City projects. Acting City Manager Michael Mays has worked with staff to put together a list of projects here in Boulder City. Infrastructure, retaining our much needed frontline employees. These are all projects that will provide jobs in the private sector as we invest in our community to build back better for the future. Again, I want to thank Congresswoman Lee for all of her support. I know that she always thinks of Boulder City. With all the other things in her district, Boulder City is one of those important things that's always front and center for her, and the support that will be provided to this community is invaluable. And with that, I will turn it over to Chief Gray.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Congresswoman Lee, Mayor McManus, and our local leaders for continuing to advocate for our city and for small cities like us across the country. It's been very helpful to get the resources we need to carry out the missions. As many people know, pandemics aren't really fire department's way of doing business. So a lot of the stuff that we've had to pivot and do is in addition to our regular work. And so these funds really help. Some of the things that we did in Boulder City is, obviously we stood up our Emergency Operations Center, which is in our normal realm. But we also took over the COVID testing for our community and the COVID vaccination process, largely ourselves, and we work with the Boulder City Hospital. And that's kind of different for fire departments across the country. But through our efforts, we were able to test over 7,000 people, and as a group, we've given over 9,000 vaccines. So in a small community, I guess that's a big deal. But a lot of it has been driven, a lot of overtime and a lot of extra effort's been needed, a lot of volunteers, so the community's really pulled together. But I want to make sure to thank the men and women of the fire department and of the city of Boulder City that really came together and helped us make this possible. And I'll turn it over to the police chief, Tim Shea.
Thank you. Well, I've been in law enforcement now almost 50 years, and I have to say that this is an unprecedented situation we're all facing. And the current pandemic has resulted in far-ranging adverse impacts. I certainly don't have to remind you of that. And the significant financial stresses and challenges have impacted us all, and public safety has not been immune. Funding assistance, such as this historic American Rescue Plan that will help us recover and maintain critical services, is a blessing. I sincerely want to thank Congresswoman Lee, her colleagues, Mayor McManus, our council, and the governmental leaders for all they've done to help women and men on the front line of critical services and operations. We really couldn't have done what we've done so far without your help and assistance, and going forward it's going to be absolutely critical for us. And I also want to thank them for all they've done to help our communities recover and heal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm open for any questions, if anyone has any questions. All right. Well, before we close up, I just want to say, really, you all represent the men and women who have been on the front line, helping our communities deal with this pandemic. Obviously, what the fire department has done, what our police force has had to deal with, not to mention all of your members putting themselves at risk as well. So my appreciation goes out to all of the leaders here and all of the frontline, your men and women who support our communities. So thank you all.